What would you do if the woman you carried home drunk was connected to the wife you buried 3 years ago? Noah Bennett thought he was only driving his powerful CEO back from another champagne-soaked corporate event. Outside rain blurred the Washington coast. Inside the black sedan, Claire Whitmore slept against the window, exhausted from fighting battles no one else could see. Then her purse fell open. A faded photograph slid onto the floor, and Noah recognized the young woman in it. She was the same stranger his late wife had spent half her life trying to find. This is not only a story about hidden bloodlines and stolen money. It is about grief, fatherhood truth, and whether love can enter a heart that still belongs to someone gone. Stay until the end. Like the video and comment where you are watching from. The photograph remained in Noah Bennett's coat pocket long after the rain stopped. By the time he reached the cedar cottage overlooking Discovery Bay, the sky had darkened to the color of wet slate. A single lamp glowed in the front window. Through the glass, he could see Sophie sitting cross-legged on the rug at their neighbor's house, her drawing pad balanced on her knees. She noticed the headlights and jumped up before he had turned off the engine. The front door opened. "You're late," she called. Noah checked his watch as he stepped onto the porch. 7 minutes. Sophie folded her arms. Her brown hair had escaped its braid and fallen over one eye. 7 minutes is still late. You sound like my supervisor. You don't have a supervisor? Then I'm in even more trouble than I thought. She tried not to smile. It lasted less than a second. Mrs. Carver appeared behind her with Sophie's backpack and a plastic container covered in foil. "She already ate," the older woman said, "but I sent you some chicken casserole. You look like you forgot lunch again." "I had lunch. Coffee does not count as lunch." Noah took the container without arguing. Mrs. Carver had lived 2 houses away since before Sophie was born. She had also known Lily. That gave her permission in her own mind to treat Noah as if he were still 20 years old and incapable of feeding himself. Sophie slipped her hand into his as they walked home. "Was the important lady difficult today?" Noah looked down at her. "Why do you call her that? Because you said she was important." "I said she runs the company." "That sounds important." "It is." "Was she difficult?" Noah thought of Claire Whitmore asleep against the window, her shoes on the floor, her voice breaking around the word mom. "No," he said. She was tired. Sophie accepted the answer. Children often accepted simple truths more easily than adults did. Inside the cottage, Noah reheated the casserole while Sophie spread her drawings across the kitchen table. The house was small, but Lily had known how to make every room feel larger. She had painted the cabinets pale blue. She had hung old nautical charts along the hallway. She had filled the window above the sink with glass bottles that caught the afternoon sun. Noah had changed almost nothing after she died. He told himself it was because the house already worked. He knew that was only part of the truth. Sophie held up a page. "I fixed the tree." Noah set 2 plates on the table and looked at the drawing. It showed a farmhouse with a deep porch, a long drive, and a cedar tree leaning toward the roof. "What was wrong with it?" "I put it on the north side." "How did you know Mom said it was on the south side?" Noah sat across from her. "When did she tell you that?" Sophie shrugged. "When I was little." "You are still little. I mean, really little." She tapped the page with her pencil. "She said she dreamed about a house near the water. There was a porch and a cedar tree. She said the tree always moved even when there wasn't any wind." Noah looked at the drawing more carefully. Lily had spoken about that house, but never as a memory. She called it a place her mind had invented from the few facts in her adoption packet. Washington, a town near water, a young mother named Evelyn. Noah had assumed Sophie remembered hearing those stories. Still, the angle of the porch unsettled him. "Dad." He looked up. Sophie had been watching him. "It's a good map," he said. "It's not finished." "You always say that." "Because maps are never finished." She lowered the page and began eating. Noah reached into his pocket. His fingers touched the edge of Claire's photograph. He did not take it out. Not yet. After dinner, he washed the dishes while Sophie completed her spelling homework. She missed the word separate twice, then became angry at the paper as if it had betrayed her. Noah sat beside her. "Say it slowly. I know how to say it. Then give each sound a place. That does not work for every word." "No, but it works for this one." She tried again. This time she got it right. Later, he read to her from a book about two children crossing the Pacific in a damaged sailboat. Sophie fell asleep before they reached the chapter where the storm arrived. Noah closed the book and stayed beside her bed. Her face had changed during the last year. The softness of early childhood was beginning to sharpen around the cheeks. Some mornings when the light struck her from the side, she looked so much like Lily that Noah had to turn away. He touched the edge of her blanket. "I may have found her," he whispered. Sophie did not move. Noah was not sure whether he meant Lily's mother, Lily's family, or something he did not yet have words for. He left the room and walked out to the workshop behind the cottage. The air inside smelled of cedar machine oil and the beeswax he used on finished furniture. A half-repaired kitchen chair stood near the workbench. Above it, on the highest shelf, rested a wooden box with Lily's initials carved into the lid. Noah had not opened it in 11 months. He brought it down carefully. The hinges made a soft sound. Inside lay Lily's folded scarf, several hospital bracelets, a stack of letters, and the silver necklace Sophie had been too young to inherit when her mother died. Beneath them was the photograph. Noah placed it beneath the work lamp. The woman in the image stood on a weathered porch. She was young, perhaps 18. Her coat was open, her hair crossed her face in the wind. A cedar tree rose behind her, its branches dark against a white sky. Noah removed Claire's photograph from his coat. He laid the prints side by side. Same porch, same young woman, same cedar tree, same pale scratch near the lower left corner. Claire's copy was blank on the back. Lily's copy carried 4 words in faded blue ink. Evelyn, Port Townsend, summer 1992. Noah sat on the workshop stool. For several minutes he did nothing. Then memory entered the room without permission. Lily was lying in a hospital bed near the living room window. Her skin had become almost translucent. The doctor had stopped discussing weeks and begun discussing comfort. Noah had been sorting mail when she spoke. "If I ever find her, I only want one thing." He looked over. "Your medical history. That would be useful." "What then?" Lily smiled faintly. "I want to hear her say my name." Noah placed the mail aside. "We will find her. You always say things like they are orders. It usually works, not with sealed adoption records. We will find another way." Lily studied the photograph on the table beside her. "I don't want her punished." "For what? For not finding me? You don't know that she tried. I don't know that she didn't." 4 days later, Lily stopped speaking. Noah returned to the present and opened a black notebook. He had carried it through interview surveillance shifts and federal courtrooms. He had not written anything important in it since leaving the bureau. On a clean page, he wrote 3 names: Claire Whitmore, Evelyn, Lily. Below them he added, "Same photograph." Not a coincidence. Across the water, the lights of a late ferry moved through the dark. At Whitmore Bay Lodge, Claire woke shortly after 6 the next morning with one shoe beneath the sofa and a headache behind her eyes. The suite curtains had been left open. Gray light filled the room. For a few seconds she did not know where she was. Then the memory of the shareholder brunch returned in pieces. Her father speaking over her, a board member avoiding her eyes, a 3rd glass of champagne she had not needed, Noah's hand at her elbow. Claire sat up. Her purse lay open on the marble table. She reached inside. Lipstick, keys, wallet, no photograph. Her fingers searched the lining again. A memory surfaced. Something falling inside the car. Noah reaching toward the floor. The expression on his face when he looked at what he had picked up. Claire rose too quickly and caught the edge of the table. The room shifted. She waited for it to settle, then called Rebecca Sloan. The family attorney answered after 4 rings. "Claire, did my mother have a child before she had me?" Silence followed. Not surprise. Recognition. Claire walked to the window. Below the bay was still. A groundskeeper moved slowly along the path beside the water. "Rebecca, where are you at the lodge? Are you alone?" "Yes, come to Seattle. Answer the question." Another silence. Then Rebecca spoke in a voice Claire had never heard from her. "Yes." Claire closed her eyes. "A boy or a girl?" "A girl. When 1992. What was her name?" "Your mother wrote Lillian Rose Hart on the hospital form." Claire opened her eyes again. On the glass, her reflection looked calm. That was one of the useful things about being raised by Evelyn Whitmore. A person could learn to look calm while the ground opened beneath her. Did the child live? Yes. Where is she? I don't know. You have been our family attorney for 38 years. I know, and you do not know the adoption was closed. The records were sealed. Your mother was told the baby went to a family in Oregon. Claire gripped the phone. Why did no one tell me that is a question for your mother? I am asking you. Rebecca released a slow breath. Because your grandparents treated the pregnancy as a threat to the family. Because your mother was 18 and afraid. Because after enough years, silence begins to look like protection, even when it is only fear. Claire looked toward the open purse. Who is Evelyn in the photograph? Rebecca did not answer immediately. Then she said, Your mother. Claire sat down. The movement was small, almost controlled. What photograph? The one from the atlas? How do you know where I found it? Because the atlas has been in the same place for 30 years. 6 weeks ago it shifted. Claire stared at the wall. There are 2 copies. Rebecca's breathing changed. Are you certain? Yes. Where did you see the other one? Claire thought of Noah. Seattle, she said. 1 hour. She ended the call before Rebecca could ask more. By 10:30, Claire was seated in the private conference room at Sloan and Mercer, 30 floors above Elliott Bay. Rebecca had closed the blinds. A legal pad sat between them. Neither woman touched it. Rebecca looked older than Claire remembered. Her silver hair had been pulled into a low knot. The skin around her eyes seemed thinner. She began without ceremony. Your mother gave birth in Tacoma on September 17, 1992. Your grandfather controlled her bank accounts, her tuition, and the apartment where she lived. The baby's father worked at the Whitmore shipyard. What was his name? Daniel Hart. Claire repeated it quietly. Rebecca continued. When Evelyn refused to sign the surrender papers, your grandfather fired Daniel. He accused him of stealing equipment. There was no evidence, but the threat was enough. Daniel disappeared 2 days before the birth. Did my mother ever find him? No. And the photograph, Evelyn gave 1 copy to the adoption agency. She asked them to place it in the child's personal history file. The agency promised the child could receive it at 18. Claire looked toward the closed blinds. So the other copy could have gone to the baby. Yes. Lillian. Yes. Claire opened her purse. The empty pocket seemed louder than anything Rebecca had said. The photograph was taken from me yesterday. By whom? My driver. Rebecca's expression sharpened. Did he know what it was? I think he recognized it. Who is he? Noah Bennett. Rebecca repeated the name, searching her memory. I don't know him. Neither do I. That realization followed Claire back to her apartment. For 3 years, Noah had driven her to board meetings, investor dinners, funerals, airports, and medical appointments with her mother. He knew when she worked late. He knew when she lied about being tired. He knew which routes she preferred when she needed silence. And she knew almost nothing about him. At noon, Claire called Whitmore Maritime's Director of Security. I need a complete background review on an employee. Human Resources can send the personnel file. I do not want the personnel file. There was a pause. Name Noah Bennett. Executive Transportation. How far back? Everything. The report arrived that evening in a sealed envelope. Claire opened it at her kitchen counter. Noah James Bennett, born in Spokane. Georgetown Law, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Financial Crimes Division, Trust Fraud. Offshore shell corporations, 2 major prosecutions, 1 resignation. His wife, Lillian Rose Hart Bennett, had died 3 years earlier, born September 17, 1992, adopted in Oregon. Claire read the line twice, then a third time, Lillian Rose Hart, the same name Rebecca had spoken in the conference room. Claire moved to the next page. Noah had resigned from the Bureau 8 months before Lily's death. 6 weeks after the funeral, he applied for a driving position at Whitmore Maritime Holdings. The timing felt too precise. A former federal investigator had entered her family's company immediately after burying a wife who might have been Evelyn's lost daughter. Claire walked to the window. Seattle glittered below. She thought of every private call she had taken in Noah's car. Her father threatening to replace her. Her mother refusing to discuss the past. Her own voice cracking after a board member betrayed her. Had Noah been listening? Had he known? Had he spent 3 years waiting? Claire returned to the report. His application included a brief statement. seeking predictable employment compatible with sole parent responsibilities. A note from transportation management said Noah had declined 3 offers to move into fleet supervision because the hours conflicted with his daughter's school schedule. The explanation was ordinary. Claire distrusted ordinary explanations most when they arrived beside extraordinary facts. At 4 the following morning, she left Seattle. The ferry terminal was nearly empty. Claire stayed inside her car during the crossing. Beyond the windshield, the water was black and restless. Wind moved across the deck in long, low whistles. She reached Discovery Bay shortly after sunrise. Noah's cottage stood at the end of a gravel lane bordered by cedar trees. It was smaller than she expected. Smoke rose from the chimney. A child's yellow raincoat hung beside the front door. Claire turned off the engine. Through the kitchen window, she saw Sophie drawing at the table. Noah stood at the stove, one hand holding a frying pan, the other pouring orange juice. The scene was so normal that Claire felt briefly foolish. Then Noah looked through the window and saw her. He opened the door before she reached the porch. He wore jeans, a dark sweater, and an expression that told her he had been expecting this. "You came earlier than I thought." Claire stopped at the bottom step. "You expected me? You stopped requesting me as your driver." "That happens. Then security opened records that have been untouched since the day I was hired. So you still have access to internal systems?" "No." "Then how do you know I know what a background investigation feels like?" Claire climbed the steps. "May I come in?" Noah glanced through the window at Sophie. "Not yet." The refusal surprised her. "I am your employer, not in my home." For a second, neither moved. Then Noah stepped outside and closed the door behind him. They sat on the porch. The bay was visible between the trees. Morning fog hung low over the water. Noah brought 2 mugs of coffee. Claire did not touch hers. "You took something from my purse." "Yes. Give it back." He reached into his coat and placed the photograph on the small table between them. Claire picked it up. Before she could speak, Noah placed another photograph beside it. Her anger vanished. The 2 prints were identical. Claire turned over the second copy. "Evelyn, Port Townsend, summer 1992. "That handwriting belongs to my mother," she said. Noah nodded. "This photograph belonged to my wife, Lillian Hart Bennett." His eyes narrowed slightly. "You read my file. I read everything. Then you know she was adopted. She was born on September 17th, 1992. Noah looked toward the water. "That was her birthday. My mother gave birth to a girl on that date." The porch became quiet. Inside, Sophie's pencil moved across paper. Claire watched Noah carefully. "Did you know who I was when you applied to Whitmore Maritime?" "I knew you were the chief executive." "That is not what I asked." "No, I did not know your mother had given birth to Lily. Why should I believe you?" Noah met her eyes. "Because if I had known, I would not have spent 3 years opening your car door." The answer struck harder than anger would have. Claire looked at the second photograph. "Why did you take the job?" "My wife had just died. My daughter was 5. I needed health insurance and work that ended before bedtime. You were an FBI agent. I was also a widower who could not leave his child with a sitter until midnight. You resigned before your wife died. She was already sick." Claire's question slowed. Noah continued. "I took leave when the doctors found the cancer. When they told us treatment was no longer working, I resigned. I thought we had more time." His voice remained steady, but one hand closed around the edge of the porch chair. Claire looked away. "How old was she? 30? Did she ever find my mother? No. Did she try for 12 years? Noah stood and went inside. When he returned, he carried a thin stack of envelopes tied with faded blue ribbon. He placed them beside the photographs. Letters to state agencies, church offices, adoption registries, genealogy organizations. Each one carried Lily's handwriting. She received the photograph when she turned 18, Noah said. The agency gave her a copy of the non-identifying history. Washington, a mother named Evelyn, a father who worked near the water. Nothing more. Claire touched the top envelope. Why did she keep searching? She wanted medical history. She wanted to know if she had siblings. He paused. She wanted to hear her mother's voice. Claire withdrew her hand. Through the kitchen window, Sophie looked up. Her eyes moved from Noah to Claire, then to the photographs. The door opened. Dad Noah turned. "It's all right, sweetheart." Sophie stepped onto the porch in flannel pajamas and bare feet. She studied Claire without embarrassment. Then she said, "You look like Mom." Claire forgot how to breathe. Noah rose. "Sophie." "Not exactly," the girl added, "mostly around the mouth, when you're trying not to say something." Claire looked at Noah. He appeared tired in a way no personnel report could have shown. Sophie pointed at the table. "That is Mom's mystery lady." Claire lowered herself slowly into the chair. "What did your mother call her?" The woman she hoped remembered her. Noah closed his eyes for one brief second. Claire looked again at Sophie. Lily's daughter. Her sister's daughter. A child sitting on a porch in Washington while Evelyn lived less than 2 hours away, never knowing that the baby she had lost had grown up married, become a mother, and died. Claire took out her phone. Her hand was steady until she found Evelyn's name. Her mother answered on the second ring. "Claire, come to Port Townsend." A pause. "Today, yes. What happened?" Claire looked through the open doorway at Sophie's unfinished map. "Your daughter is here." There was no sound on the line. Claire swallowed. "She died 3 years ago," she said, "but her little girl is sitting 10 feet away from me." For several seconds, Claire heard nothing but the faint movement of Evelyn's breath on the other end of the line. Then her mother said, "What did you say?" Claire looked through the open doorway. Sophie had returned to the kitchen table. She sat with one knee tucked beneath her pencil, moving over the unfinished map, as if the room had not shifted around her. Her name was Lily Hart Bennett, Claire said. She was born in Tacoma on September 17, 1992. She was adopted by a family in Oregon. Another silence. This one carried recognition. Claire turned toward the porch railing and lowered her voice. She had the photograph. Evelyn inhaled sharply. "The one from the agency?" "Yes. Where is she?" Claire closed her eyes. "She died 3 years ago." The words seemed to travel across the water between them. When Evelyn answered, her voice had become smaller. "How cancer? What kind, I don't know." Noah stood a few feet away, listening without appearing to. His face had gone still. Claire looked at him. "Pancreatic," he said quietly. "Stage 4. Claire repeated it into the phone. Evelyn made a sound that Claire had never heard from her before. It was not quite a cry. It was the sound of a person trying to hold a door closed while something larger pressed against it from the other side. "Come to Port Townsend," Claire said. "I need to speak to Rebecca. Rebecca already told me. She had no right. She had every right. You left the truth in a book and waited for someone else to find it. That is not fair." "No, it is not." Claire watched the fog drift between the cedar trees. "Bring whatever you have from the hospital. Bring the adoption papers. Bring anything that proves what happened." Evelyn's answer came after a long pause. "I will be there by noon." The call ended. Claire lowered the phone. Noah remained near the porch steps. "You did not have to speak to her that way," he said. Claire turned. "You do not know my mother?" "No. She has spent her entire life choosing silence, and you just told her that her daughter died before she could find her." Claire's jaw tightened. "You think I should have made it gentler? I think there was no gentle way." The anger left her as quickly as it had come. Noah picked up the 2 photographs and placed them inside Lily's wooden box. He handled them carefully, touching only the edges. "Does Sophie know everything?" Claire asked. "She knows Lily was adopted." "Does she know Lily searched for her mother?" "She knows there was a woman in a photograph. She knows Lily hoped to find her one day, and now Noah looked through the window at his daughter. Now she needs the truth in pieces small enough for an 8-year-old to carry." Claire followed his gaze. Sophie had drawn another window onto the farmhouse. The child paused, erased it, then drew it again. "What do we tell her about my mother?" "The truth. All of it, no. Not all at once." Claire looked at him. "You make that sound easy. It is not." He opened the door. Sophie put on socks. She looked down at her feet as though she had only just noticed them. "Why? Because the porch is cold. I am not cold. Your toes are purple. They are not purple. They are negotiating with purple." Sophie sighed and disappeared down the hallway. Claire stood outside listening to the ordinary rhythm of the house. A cabinet opened, a drawer closed. Sophie complained that she could not find matching socks. Noah told her matching socks were not required for survival. The simplicity of it hurt. Claire had grown up in rooms where every word was measured. Breakfast had been served beneath chandeliers. Staff members entered silently and removed plates before anyone had finished speaking. Her father read financial newspapers while her mother stared through windows. No one had ever argued about purple toes. Noah held the door open. "You can come inside now." Claire entered. The kitchen smelled of coffee and butter. A pan of eggs had gone cold on the stove. Sophie's drawings covered half the table. A yellow raincoat hung from a chair. Claire sat near the window. Sophie returned wearing one blue sock and one red sock. "Dad says a woman is coming." "Yes," Noah said. "Is she the mystery lady?" Claire looked at him. He pulled out a chair and sat beside his daughter. "The woman in the photograph is named Evelyn." Sophie considered that. "Is she alive?" "Yes. Does Mom know Noah's face changed?" Claire looked away. "Sophie," he said carefully, "Evelyn is your mother's birth mother." The child's pencil stopped moving. "My mother had two mothers. She had the mother who gave birth to her and the parents who raised her." "Why did Evelyn not raise her?" "Because she was very young and the adults around her made choices for her." Sophie frowned. "Did Mom know her? No. Did Evelyn know Mom? No. Then how do we know Claire reached for the photograph? Because Evelyn is my mother." Sophie looked at her. The room became very quiet. "You are Mom's sister." Claire felt the words enter a place inside her that had been empty without her knowing it. "I believe so. Did you know her? No." Sophie's expression did not change, but her hand closed around the pencil. "That is sad." "Yes." "Are you sad?" Claire swallowed. "I think I am beginning to be." Sophie nodded as though this made sense. "Does that make you my aunt, yes?" The child looked at Noah. "Can I call her Aunt Claire?" Claire answered before he could. "Not until you want to." Sophie studied her for another moment. "Okay." She returned to the map, but her pencil moved more slowly now. At 11:46, tires sounded on the gravel lane. Noah stepped onto the porch. A silver sedan stopped beside Claire's car. Evelyn Whitmore remained behind the wheel for nearly a minute. From the kitchen window, Claire watched her mother grip the steering wheel with both hands. Evelyn was wearing a cream suit beneath a dark wool coat. Her hair was pinned neatly at the back of her head. From a distance, she looked exactly as she did at charity dinners and museum openings. Then she opened the door. Her legs nearly failed beneath her. Claire moved toward the porch, but Noah lifted one hand. "Let her walk." Evelyn steadied herself against the car. She carried the old leather purse Claire remembered from childhood. It had belonged to Claire's grandmother and was one of the few things Evelyn refused to replace. She crossed the gravel slowly. Noah met her at the bottom step. "Mrs. Whitmore." Evelyn looked at him. "You were married to her?" "Yes." Her eyes moved over his face as though searching for evidence of Lily there. "How long? 11 years." Was she happy? Noah did not answer immediately. She had happy years. The distinction struck Evelyn. Claire saw it. Noah stepped aside. Sophie stood in the doorway. She had changed into jeans and a green sweater. Her mismatched socks remained visible above her shoes. Evelyn stopped. The leather purse slipped against her wrist. Sophie looked up at her with the direct attention of a child who had not yet learned to pretend she was not staring. "Hello," Sophie said. Evelyn opened her mouth. No sound came. Sophie waited. "My name is Sophie Bennett." Evelyn pressed one hand against her coat. "I know." Sophie tilted her head. "How Claire told me." "Oh." The child stepped forward and offered her hand. Noah had taught her to greet adults properly when she was 5. She usually did it with exaggerated seriousness. Evelyn looked at the small hand. Her own began to tremble. She took it. "Hello, Sophie. You are Evelyn." "Yes, the lady in the picture." Evelyn's eyes filled. "Yes." Sophie's hand remained in hers. "Dad says you knew my mom when she was very small." Evelyn looked at Noah. He gave the slightest nod. "In a way," she said. "I knew her before she was born." Sophie thought about that. "Come inside. The porch is cold." Evelyn followed her into the cottage. Noah made tea. No one drank it. They sat in the living room near the wood stove. Sophie remained on the rug with her map close enough to hear but far enough to pretend she was not listening. Evelyn placed the leather purse on her lap. Her fingers moved over the brass clasp. "I brought something." She opened the purse and removed a folded document sealed inside a clear plastic sleeve. She handed it to Noah. The paper was yellow at the edges. At the top were the words, "Voluntary surrender of custody." Claire leaned closer. The name written in blue ink was Lillian Rose Hart. Noah read the date. September 20th, 1992. 3 days after Lily's birth. She kept the name Evelyn whispered. Noah looked up. What, the family that adopted her? They kept Lillian. She went by Lily. Evelyn pressed her lips together. I called her Lily when I was pregnant. Noah lowered his eyes to the document. Claire saw the muscles in his jaw tighten. My parents told me the adoptive family would probably change it. Evelyn continued. They said I should not become attached to a name. Sophie looked up from the rug. Why Evelyn turned toward her? Because they believed forgetting would make everything easier. Did it know? The answer came without hesitation. Sophie returned to her drawing. Evelyn folded her hands over the purse. My father owned the Whitmore shipyard then. Daniel worked there. Lily's father, Claire, said, Yes, what happened to him? Evelyn looked toward the window. He wanted to marry me. We were children, but we believed wanting something was enough. Her voice remained controlled, though tears stood in her eyes. My father called Daniel into his office. He accused him of stealing tools from the yard. He said he would have him arrested unless Daniel left Port Townsend. Was anything stolen? Claire asked. No. Did Daniel leave? He disappeared 2 days before Lily was born. You never heard from him again. I received one letter 6 months later. It had no return address. What did it say? That he was sorry? That he had been told the baby died? Claire sat back. Noah's eyes sharpened. Who told him? My father. The wood stove clicked softly. Outside wind moved through the cedar branches. Claire looked at her mother. You knew grandfather lied to him. I learned years later. And you did nothing. Evelyn turned. I searched for Daniel. I hired investigators. By then he had used a different name. There were no digital records, no social media, nothing that people now mistake for permanence. Claire's voice hardened. But Lily was alive. Yes, you knew where the adoption took place. I knew the agency, I knew the hospital, I knew the state, and Rebecca tried. She says the records were sealed. They were. You had money. I had fear. Claire stood. The movement startled Sophie. Noah looked at her but did not intervene. Claire walked to the window. You always say that as though fear were something that happened to you? Evelyn's face changed. What would you like me to say? That you chose it. Evelyn looked at Sophie, then back at Claire. I chose silence after the law refused me. I chose my marriage. I chose to believe your father when he said reopening the past would destroy our family. Our family. Claire laughed once without humor. You mean the family that did not include her? Evelyn lowered her eyes. Yes. The answer ended the argument more completely than denial would have. Noah rose. There is something you should see. He walked to the workshop and returned with Lily's wooden box. He placed it on the coffee table. Evelyn stared at the carved initials, LHB. Noah opened the lid. Inside were letters arranged by year. State agencies, hospitals, churches, adoption registries, private investigators, genealogy services. Evelyn reached for the first envelope, then stopped before touching it. May I? Noah nodded. She opened a letter dated 12 years earlier. Lily's handwriting covered 2 pages. To whom it may concern, I am searching for my biological mother. I do not want to disrupt her life. I do not want money. I would like medical information and the opportunity to know whether she is safe. Evelyn's hand began to shake. She read another, then another. One had been returned unopened. Another contained a formal refusal. A third stated that identifying information could not be released without written consent from both biological parents. Evelyn looked at Noah. Did she ever speak badly of me? No, never. She was angry sometimes. She had every right. She was more afraid that you had forgotten her. Evelyn closed her eyes. I did not forget one day. Claire turned from the window. Then why did you hide the photograph? Because looking at it became the only punishment I allowed myself. Noah's voice remained quiet. Punishment did not help Lily. Evelyn looked at him. No, the word was barely audible. He removed an envelope from beneath the stack. This one was never mailed. The front read, To the woman in the photograph. Evelyn touched the handwriting. Can I read it? It belonged to Lily. Evelyn withdrew her hand. Noah looked toward Sophie. The child was watching now. He opened the envelope himself. The letter inside was short. He read the first line aloud. To the woman in the photograph, I do not know whether you remember me, but I have spent my life remembering someone I never met. Evelyn bent forward. Her face disappeared into her hands. The sound that came from her was quiet and broken. Claire had seen her mother at funerals, court hearings, and hospital beds. Evelyn had stood beside Claire's father when Whitmore Maritime nearly collapsed during a strike. She had never cried where anyone could see her. Now her shoulders shook in a small cottage overlooking the bay. Sophie rose from the rug. Noah reached for her, but she walked past him. She stopped in front of Evelyn. Are you my grandmother? Evelyn lowered her hands. Her face was wet. I believe I am. Why do you believe? Because your mother was born on the day my daughter was born. Because she had my photograph. Because she had the name I gave her. Sophie considered this. Is there a test? Claire almost smiled through the ache in her chest. Yes, she said. There is. Then we should do the test. Evelyn looked at Sophie. The child's expression remained serious. Did you not want my mom? Sophie asked. Noah's body went still. Evelyn did not look away. I wanted her every day, but you left her. Yes, can both things be true? Evelyn's breath caught. Yes, she said. They can. Sophie looked down at the wooden box. Mom wanted to find you, I know. She got sick, I know, she died. Evelyn's chin trembled. I know. Sophie did not hug her. She returned to the rug and sat beside her map. That distance seemed to hurt Evelyn more than anger would have. Noah placed the letter back inside its envelope. Rebecca arrived shortly after 2. She carried a medical testing kit and a locked file case. The collection was simple, a cotton swab inside each cheek. Evelyn first, Claire second, Sophie last. Sophie watched Rebecca seal the samples. How long? 2 days if the laboratory accepts the emergency request. Why is it an emergency? Rebecca looked at the adults, because sometimes a family has already lost enough time. Noah glanced at her. Rebecca lowered her eyes. The samples left that afternoon with a private courier. Evelyn stayed at a hotel near the harbor. She did not ask to remain at the cottage. Before leaving, she stood beside Sophie's drawing. What house is that? Sophie pointed to the porch. Mom dreamed about it. Evelyn leaned closer. The color left her face. There was a cedar tree on the south side, Sophie said. I keep putting it wrong. Evelyn gripped the edge of the table. My grandmother had a house like that on Whidbey Island. Claire looked at her. You never took us there. It was sold before you were born. Sophie turned the map toward her. Was the driveway curved? Yes. Were there 3 windows upstairs? 4. Sophie erased one line and drew another. Was the tree close to the porch closer than that? How did Mom know? Evelyn stared at the page. I don't know. Noah did. Lily's adoption packet contained a typed description of Evelyn's childhood home. Lily had read it so many times that she could recite it from memory. She had built the house in her imagination and passed it to Sophie through bedtime stories. He did not explain. Not yet. Some truths deserved to arrive after the grief had found somewhere to sit. 2 days later, the laboratory report came by secure email. Claire was on the morning ferry when Rebecca called. The deck was nearly empty. Wind pushed her hair across her face. Rebecca did not make her wait. The results confirm it. Claire held the phone tighter. Sophie is Evelyn's biological granddaughter. The probability exceeds 99.9%. And me, you are Sophie's biological aunt. Claire looked across the water. The shoreline of Port Townsend appeared through the fog. She imagined Lily at 18 opening the adoption packet and finding Evelyn's photograph. At 20 mailing letters. At 25 searching public records. At 30 dying without hearing her mother say her name. Claire had spent years believing she understood loneliness. She had been wrong. Noah met her near the marina. He stood beside the railing with his hands in his coat pockets. She did not greet him. It is confirmed. He nodded. For a while, neither spoke. A ferry horn sounded behind them. Claire watched a gull lift from the water. Did she look like me? Noah stared toward the harbor. Sometimes. That must be difficult. Not for the reason you think. Claire turned. What reason do I think that I might remind you of her? You have the same mouth when you are trying not to say what you feel. Sophie said that. She notices more than I do. Claire gave him a tired look. I doubt that. Noah leaned against the railing. Lily entered a room and changed it without trying. People knew when she was there. And me. You enter a room and make sure no one knows you are inside it. Claire absorbed the words. That sounds like criticism. It is. She almost smiled. Then the smile disappeared. She should have had my life. Noah turned toward her. No. She should have known my mother. She should have grown up with a family name, education, security. Lily had parents who loved her. That is not what I meant. I know. Claire looked down at the black water between the dock posts. She should have had the choice. Yes. She should have known she had a sister. Yes. Claire's voice broke. She should have had more time. Noah did not answer. There was no answer large enough. A gust of wind pushed rain across the marina. Claire stepped back. Her shoe slipped on the wet board. Noah caught her by the arm. His hand was warm through her coat. For 1 second she stood close enough to feel his breath. Neither moved. Claire looked at him. Do you ever see her when you look at me? Noah's grip loosened but did not disappear. I see similarities. That is not what I asked. No. The answer came firmly. I do not see my wife when I look at you. Claire should have felt relief. Instead, something more complicated moved through her. Noah released her arm. They walked toward the cottage without speaking. That evening, Evelyn returned. Sophie sat at the kitchen table with the laboratory report beside her map. She could not understand the numbers, but she understood the conclusion. When Evelyn entered, Sophie looked up. So you are my grandmother? Evelyn stopped near the door. Yes. Sophie tapped the chair beside her. You can sit here. Evelyn removed her coat and sat. Sophie turned the map toward her. The tree is still wrong. Evelyn picked up a green pencil. May I? Sophie handed it to her. Evelyn drew a small line on the south side of the house. Like this. Sophie studied it. Closer. Evelyn moved the tree nearer the porch. Sophie nodded. That looks right. Noah watched from the hallway. Claire stood beside him. Their shoulders nearly touched. Neither stepped away. Later, after Sophie went to bed, Noah brought a small recorder into the living room. Lily made this during her last week, he said. Evelyn held both hands together. For Sophie, yes. He pressed the button. Static filled the room. Then Lily's voice emerged, weak, breathless, unmistakably alive. Hi, Soph. Noah lowered his eyes. Claire sat very still. I know you are going to be angry that I left. You are allowed. Your dad will try to make everything sound reasonable because he thinks facts can fix pain. Let him try. It makes him feel useful. A faint laugh followed. Noah closed his eyes. Lily continued. Families are strange. Sometimes they are the people who raise you. Sometimes they are the people you spend years trying to find. Sometimes they arrive late and ask for a place at the table. Evelyn pressed one hand over her mouth. If Dad ever finds the woman in the picture, tell him not to punish her for being late. Just make sure she tells the truth. The recording ended. No one spoke. Evelyn looked toward Sophie's closed bedroom door. I was alive, she whispered. I was less than 2 hours away. Noah placed the recorder on the table. She did not know that. The words were not forgiveness. They were only true. Headlights moved across the front window. A car stopped outside. Rebecca entered carrying a sealed archive box. She placed it on the kitchen table beside Sophie's map. The cardboard had yellowed at the corners. Red legal tape crossed the lid. Rebecca removed her gloves. Lily spent her life believing she had been forgotten. Evelyn stared at the box. She was not. Rebecca cut the tape. Inside were trust documents, stock certificates, and more than 30 years of financial statements. Noah lifted the first page. Claire moved beside him. What is this? She asked. Rebecca looked toward the hallway where Sophie slept. A trust created in Lillian Rose Hart's name 3 days after the adoption. Noah turned another page. The original contribution was modest. The current figures were not. Rebecca's face tightened. Evelyn continued funding it for more than 3 decades. It was meant to pass to Lily or to any direct descendant who could be legally identified. Claire looked at the most recent statement. $38 million. That is what should be there, Rebecca said. Noah examined the account balance. His eyes stopped moving. What happened to the rest? Rebecca opened a second folder. Someone began transferring money out of the trust 22 years ago. Claire's voice became cold. Who controlled it? Rebecca looked directly at her. Your father. The words stayed in the kitchen long after Rebecca spoke them. Claire stared at the second folder. Through the hallway, Sophie's nightlight cast a thin yellow line beneath her bedroom door. Somewhere inside the cottage, an old pipe clicked as it cooled. The ordinary sounds made Rebecca's accusation feel even more impossible. My father manages company assets, Claire said. He has never managed my mother's personal trust. Rebecca removed another document from the archive box. He became administrative trustee in 2004. Claire looked at Evelyn. You gave him control. Evelyn's face had gone pale. He said the independent firm was charging unreasonable fees. He said the company's financial office could manage it more efficiently. And you believed him. He was my husband. Noah turned the first statement toward the light. The trust had begun with $4,000 proceeds from a ring Evelyn's grandmother had left her and a small inheritance placed in Evelyn's name when she turned 18. Rebecca unfolded a schedule of contributions. Evelyn added to it every year, she said. Dividends, bonuses, inherited shares, and several personal investments. By the late 90s, the trust held more than $2 million. Claire moved closer to the table. And now it should hold $38 million, approximately. Noah studied a column of transfers, but it does not. Rebecca opened the most recent statement. The balance shown was $5,800,000. Claire read the figure twice. More than $32 million is missing. No, Noah said. He turned to a different page. More than $32 million has been moved. Missing means we do not know where it went. His voice had changed. The softness he used with Sophie had disappeared. So had the restraint he carried around Claire. His eyes moved quickly across dates, account numbers, and entity names. For the first time, Claire saw the man described in the security report. Not the driver, not the widower, the investigator. Noah separated the statements into 3 groups. What are you looking for? Claire asked. Repetition. In what amount states destinations? People who steal over a long period usually develop habits. They change names. They rarely change behavior. He pointed to a transfer from 2005. $800,000 had moved from the trust into a company called Rainfield Capital. 3 days later, $760,000 had been transferred to an investment fund in the Cayman Islands. 5 days after that, $720,000 returned to a consulting firm in Seattle. Claire read the company name. Northline Advisory. Do you know it? No. Evelyn shook her head. Noah turned to another year. The same pattern appeared again. Different amounts. Same companies. Same number of days between each transfer. This is layering, he said. The money leaves a legitimate account, passes through several entities, then returns disguised as payment for services or investment proceeds. Rebecca watched him. You have seen this before. I prosecuted it. Claire looked at him. This exact structure, close enough that I remember the order. He pulled another statement from the box. Delaware Holding Company, Cayman Fund, domestic consulting firm. Each transfer is smaller than the one before it because fees are removed at every step. The final company sends the money to whoever controls the scheme. Evelyn gripped the back of a chair. Grant told me the trust was growing. He prepared the statements you received, Rebecca said. I saw bank seals, copies, I saw signatures. Some were mine, some were not. Evelyn sat down. The motion was slow, as though her body had become heavier. How long Rebecca placed the earliest suspicious statement on the table? 22 years. Claire looked toward the hallway. For 22 years, Grant had been stealing from Lily. He had attended Claire's graduations, birthdays, and company ceremonies. He had stood beside Evelyn at charity galas and praised her loyalty. He had toasted family legacy while money meant for Evelyn's lost daughter moved through accounts he controlled. Claire heard her own voice as if it belonged to someone else. Did he know Lily was alive? He knew the trust could only pass to Lily or her descendants, Rebecca said. Whether he knew her location, I cannot prove. But he knew what the money represented. Yes, Noah continued reading. He stopped at a document dated 6 years earlier. His expression tightened. What? He turned the page toward Claire. The trustee listed on the domestic side was Cross Financial Services. She read it without understanding. Noah leaned back. In 2020, I investigated a family trust fraud case involving Cross Financial. Rebecca's eyes narrowed. The Halloran case. You know it. It was in the papers. My team proved that a private wealth manager had moved trust assets through a Delaware company and a Cayman feeder fund. Cross processed the domestic transfers. Claire looked between them. What happened? Convictions, asset recovery. Cross paid a civil penalty and claimed one employee acted without authorization, and this structure, it is almost identical. Claire looked at the papers covering the table. You think my father copied a federal case? I think someone studied it. Noah found a registration record for Northline Advisory. The listed manager was Thomas Vale. Claire recognized the name. He drove for my father. Noah looked up. When years ago, before I became CEO, Evelyn pressed 2 fingers to her forehead. Thomas died. Claire turned. When 2 years ago. Noah returned to the statements. Payments to Northline Advisory had continued every quarter, including 3 months earlier. A dead man is receiving consulting fees, he said. Rebecca closed the archive box. If we prove Grant controls Northline, we can recover the money. Claire looked at her. If suspicion is not proof. Noah lifted the company registration. This gives us a nominee. We need the beneficial owner bank authority records or communications connecting Grant to the transfers. Claire's phone began to vibrate. The screen showed Martin Kessler, Whitmore Maritime's chief financial officer. She let it ring. Then it rang again. Noah glanced at the name. You should answer. Martin reports everything to my father. Then hear what your father wants you to know. Claire accepted the call. Martin. His voice was formal. Claire, your office accessed historical finance records this afternoon. My office accesses company records every day. These involved former subsidiaries. I am aware. Your father asked whether there is a problem. My father is chairman. You are the chief financial officer. If there is a problem, I expect you to tell me. A pause followed. There is no problem. Then stop calling me. She ended the conversation. Noah watched her. He already knows. Yes. How Martin receives an alert whenever anyone opens archived executive files. Can you disable it? I can. Do not. Claire understood. If I disable it, he knows I am hiding something. If you leave it active, he sees what you want him to see. She looked at Noah differently. You did this for a living. I did many things for a living. Driving was one of the quieter ones. Until Saturday, Rebecca packed several documents into her file case. I need to return to Seattle. I will prepare an emergency petition to freeze the trust. How quickly? Claire asked. If the judge accepts the evidence tomorrow, and if Grant moves the money first, Rebecca looked at Noah. He answered. Then we find where it went. Evelyn had not moved. Claire walked to her. Mother. Evelyn looked up. I signed the trustee change. You did not steal the money. I gave him the door. He chose to walk through it. Evelyn looked toward Lily's wooden box. I thought I was protecting what was left of her. Noah closed the folder in front of him. You protected the secret. Evelyn flinched. He did not soften the words. That is not the same as protecting Lily. Silence followed. Evelyn nodded once. No, she said. It is not. The next morning, Claire returned to Seattle before sunrise. She did not go home. She entered Whitmore Tower through the underground garage and took the private elevator to the executive floor. The building felt different when empty. Without assistants, phones, and footsteps, the glass hallways resembled the interior of a sealed aquarium. Claire entered her office and logged into the financial archive. She searched for Northline Advisory. 47 payments appeared. Most were marked as consulting services. There were no reports attached, no invoices describing the work, only authorizations. Grant Whitmore, Martin Kessler. Claire opened the electronic signature logs. Several approvals had been issued while Grant was overseas. Someone had used his credentials from a computer inside Whitmore Tower. The terminal belonged to Martin. Claire copied the records onto an encrypted drive. Then she printed the board minutes from 2004, the year Grant became trustee. A paragraph near the bottom caught her attention. Whitmore Maritime had loaned Northline Advisory $3 million for strategic development. The loan had never been repaid. Grant had used company money to strengthen the same shell entity that later received Lily's trust assets. Claire heard the outer office door open. Martin Kessler entered, carrying 2 coffees. He stopped when he saw her. "You are early. So are you." He placed 1 cup on her desk. "Your father wants to see you. He knows where my office is." Martin glanced at the printer. "What are you working on?" Claire turned the pages face down. "Quarterly exposure." "To what?" She looked at him. "People who think I do not understand my own company." Martin's polite expression remained in place. "Claire, whatever you believe you found, you should speak to Grant before making assumptions. I have not mentioned finding anything." His eyes shifted toward the papers. The mistake lasted less than a second. It was enough. Claire picked up the coffee he had brought and poured it into the sink. "Tell my father I will see him at the board meeting." "There is no board meeting. There will be." Martin left without taking his own coffee. At 8:15, Noah received an email terminating his employment. The notice accused him of violating executive privacy during Claire's transportation from the shareholder event. He read it at the kitchen table while Sophie ate cereal. "Did you lose your job?" she asked. Noah folded the phone face down. "Yes, because of the picture. Partly." Sophie chewed slowly. "Are we going to lose the house, no?" "Are you sure?" "Yes." She studied him. "You say yes fast when you are worried." Noah reached across the table. "We are not losing the house. What will you do? I will find other work." "As a driver?" "Probably not." Sophie looked relieved. "I did not like the hat." Noah almost smiled. A car stopped outside. When he looked through the window, he saw a man in a gray jacket standing near the road with a camera. The man raised it. Noah stepped onto the porch. The camera lowered. "Can I help you?" The man turned toward his car. Noah walked down the steps. "You are on private property." The man opened the driver's door. "Public road. You crossed the fence line." The man looked at the cottage. "Is Evelyn Whitmore inside?" Noah took another step. "Leave." The car drove away. By noon, photographs of Evelyn entering the cottage had been sent to 3 business reporters. At 2, an online article appeared. Whitmore family meets secretly with former FBI driver amid questions about missing assets. At 4, a second article published images of Claire leaning on Noah outside the resort. The angle made his hand at her elbow look intimate. The headline read, "Whitmore CEO's relationship with employee raises governance concerns." Claire saw it from the back seat of a company car. Her replacement driver kept his eyes forward. Her phone filled with messages. Board members, investors, reporters, her father. Grant called 3 times before she answered. "What have you done?" he asked. Claire watched Seattle move beyond this window. "What have I done?" "You brought a former federal agent into a family dispute. He was already here. You employed him for 3 years. You know what I mean." "No. Explain it." Grant's voice lowered. "A desperate widower discovers a wealthy family and suddenly claims his dead wife was one of us. The DNA test confirms it. That proves a biological connection. It does not prove his intentions. His intentions are not the reason $32 million disappeared." The silence that followed told Claire more than denial would have. Grant finally said, "Come to my house." "No. We need to discuss this privately. You lost the right to privacy when you used company accounts to steal from Lily. Do not say her name as though you knew her." Claire looked out at the rain. "You did not know her either. I knew what your mother told me. And still you took the money. You have no idea how that trust was managed. I have every statement." Grant's breath changed. "Rebecca gave them to you." "Yes. That woman has been waiting 30 years to tear this family apart." "No. She was waiting for Lily's heir." Grant spoke more carefully. "Listen to me. There are people on the board who already question your judgment. Do not turn a private family embarrassment into a corporate crisis. You made it corporate. If you continue, I will call an emergency vote." Claire leaned back against the seat. "Then call it." He ended the call. The meeting notice arrived 17 minutes later. Emergency session of the Whitmore Maritime Board, Friday at 2. 1 agenda item, vote of no confidence in the chief executive officer. That evening, Claire drove to the rented house she kept outside Port Townsend. She had leased it years earlier for weekends she rarely took. Now the dining table was covered with financial records. Noah arrived after putting Sophie to bed at Mrs. Carver's house. He removed his wet coat at the door. "You should have told me about the reporter," Claire said. "You had enough happening. I decide what is enough." Noted. He walked to the table. Claire placed the internal authorization logs beside him. "Martin approved transfers using my father's credentials. Noah read the records. This connects him to the activity, not Grant. Grant authorized the original contracts. He will claim Martin exceeded his authority. He will sacrifice Martin." "Yes," Claire crossed her arms. "You say that as though it is expected." "It is." Noah pointed to 3 transfers. "These payments occurred on dates when your father purchased voting shares through a private holding company." Claire followed the figures. The amounts matched within less than 2%. He used the trust to buy company shares. That is what it looks like. He built his board control with Lily's money. Noah looked at her. "Now you understand why this is not only a trust dispute." Claire sat down. Rain moved across the windows in a soft sheet. "My father taught me that the company was the only thing no one could take from us." Noah remained standing. "Who is us?" She looked up. "My family. Which one?" The question landed quietly. Claire turned toward the records. "Do not use your interrogation techniques on me." That was not a technique. What was it? A question. She looked at the signatures again. "I spent 15 years protecting something he built with stolen money. You protected employees' contracts, pensions, and ships. Those things are not him. He made sure they felt like him." Noah pulled out a chair. "What does the board look like?" 6 support him. 5 support me. 1 claims to be undecided. Who, Arthur Bell? What does he want to survive? That is useful." Claire almost laughed. "You have a strange understanding of useful. People who want to survive move toward evidence. They worked for hours." Noah reconstructed the path of the money. Claire identified the corporate approvals that allowed it. 1 transfer led to a property company in Vancouver. Another funded Grant's purchase of a private marina. A third covered losses from a failed shipping venture he had hidden from the board. Near midnight, Claire found a pending authorization. $30 million. The transfer was scheduled for Friday morning. Destination Cayman Islands. Noah examined the account. He is clearing what remains. Rebecca is filing the freeze request. If the court acts before 9, and if it does not, the money leaves the country. Claire placed both hands on the table. Her fingers touched Noah's. Neither moved. The contact was slight, warm skin against warm skin. Still, the room changed around it. Claire looked at their hands. "When you look at me, do you ever see Lily Noah did not pull away? I see similarities." "That is not what I asked." "No?" She raised her eyes. "I do not see my wife when I look at you." Claire felt relief first, then something she did not want to name. Noah continued. "You are Lily's sister, Sophie's aunt. Until yesterday, you were my employer. And now we are standing in a room surrounded by evidence that your father stole from my daughter. That is not an answer. It is the only honest one tonight." Claire drew her hand back. "Nothing can happen." "No." The answer came too quickly. She looked toward the rain. "Good." Noah watched her for a moment. "You do not sound relieved." "I am tired." "That is not what I said." She turned. "Do you correct everyone this often?" "Only people who spend their lives correcting everyone else." For one brief second, Claire smiled. Then her phone rang. "Rebecca." Claire answered immediately. "Did the judge sign it?" "Not yet." Rebecca's voice sounded strained. "The court wants more evidence connecting Grant personally to the accounts. We have the corporate authorizations. That connects Whitmore Maritime. His attorneys can argue Martin acted alone." Noah leaned closer to hear. Rebecca continued. "There is another problem. The transfer has been moved forward to 9 tomorrow morning." Claire looked at the clock. 1:13. "The board meeting is not until 2. "I know." Noah opened Grant's corporate authority file. "Can the bank stop it if the board removes his signing power?" "Yes," Rebecca said. "But the resolution has to be delivered before the transfer clears." Claire looked at the vote count on the table. 6 against her, 5 with her. Arthur Bell undecided. "We do not have the votes." Noah studied the ownership chart. Then he found a block of shares held under a marital proxy. Evelyn Whitmore. For 26 years, Grant had voted them on her behalf. Noah tapped the page. "You have 1 vote you are not counting." Claire followed his finger. My mother has never opposed him in public. She does not have to oppose him in public. The meeting is a board session. She has the right to attend as a voting shareholder. Claire stared at the name. Rebecca spoke through the phone. Evelyn would have to revoke Grant's proxy before the meeting. Claire picked up her coat. Noah closed the folder. Where is she? Rebecca answered. The Harbor House Hotel. Across town, Evelyn sat alone at the edge of a hotel bed. The curtains were open. Beyond the glass, rain darkened the marina and blurred the lights along the pier. Her wedding ring lay in her palm. She turned it slowly beneath the lamp, looking at the thin circle of gold as though it belonged to someone whose life she had once mistaken for her own. Evelyn turned the wedding ring once more beneath the hotel lamp. For 26 years, Grant had worn his certainty like armor. He had answered questions before she finished asking them. He had signed papers and told her the details were beneath her. He had taken her silence for loyalty because silence had always been easier for him to use. A knock sounded at the door. Evelyn closed her hand around the ring. Claire stood in the hallway with the rain on the shoulders of her coat. Noah waited several steps behind her, holding a leather folder beneath one arm. Evelyn looked from her daughter to the man who had married Lily. You found the transfer. Claire entered. $30 million. It clears at 9 tomorrow morning. Evelyn stepped aside to let Noah in. He remained near the door. Claire placed the ownership documents on the small hotel table. Father has been voting your shares through a marital proxy. I know. You can revoke it. Evelyn stared at the papers. Grant told me the proxy was a formality. He used it to control the board. He used many things. Claire sat across from her. We need your vote. Evelyn looked toward the window. Rainwater traveled down the glass, bending the harbor lights into long gold lines. If I revoke it, he will know. He already knows we found the trust. That is not what I mean. Claire waited. Evelyn opened her hand and placed the ring on the table. He will know I have chosen a side. Noah finally spoke. You chose a side 34 years ago. Evelyn looked at him. He did not raise his voice. You created the trust. I also allowed Grant to control it. You cannot change that tonight. No, but you can decide what your name means tomorrow. Claire watched her mother absorb the words. For most of Claire's life, Evelyn had seemed incapable of being surprised. She received bad news with her back straight and her hands folded. She endured Grant's anger by becoming quieter than he was loud. Now her fingers moved toward the revocation form. Rebecca arrived 10 minutes later with a notary. Evelyn read every page. She did not allow Claire to hurry her. At the final signature line, she paused. Once I sign this, Grant cannot vote the shares. Rebecca nodded. He also loses access to the accounts connected to your personal holdings. And the board seat. The shares give you the right to attend tomorrow's meeting and cast your own vote. Evelyn picked up the pen. What if he refuses to recognize it? Then I file for an emergency injunction before the meeting begins. Evelyn signed her full name. The pen made a faint scratching sound across the paper. It was the smallest sound in the room. It changed everything. The next morning, Seattle woke beneath a low ceiling of clouds. Whitmore Tower rose over the waterfront, its glass walls reflecting the gray harbor. At 8:20, Claire entered through the main lobby. Reporters had already gathered behind the security barriers. Questions followed her across the marble floor. Ms. Whitmore, did you misuse corporate security to investigate your father? Is the missing trust connected to Whitmore Maritime? Are you involved with Noah Bennett? Claire did not stop. Noah entered through a side door with Rebecca. He wore a charcoal suit that had been hanging untouched in the back of his closet since Lily's funeral. The shoulders fit more loosely than they once had. His former bureau identification rested inside the leather folder. A photographer recognized him. Mr. Bennett, did you steal private property from Claire Whitmore? Noah continued walking. Were you targeting the Whitmore family before you joined the company? He did not look toward the cameras. Inside the elevator, Rebecca pressed the button for the 42nd floor. Claire studied Noah's reflection in the mirrored wall. You do not have to present. Yes, I do. My father will make this personal. It is personal. He will use Lily. Noah looked at her. Then he should be careful with her name. The elevator doors opened. The boardroom occupied the east side of the tower. Glass walls looked across Elliott Bay toward the islands. 12 leather chairs surrounded a polished walnut table. Grant sat at the head. Martin Kessler sat 2 seats to his right. Arthur Bell, the undecided director, stood near the windows with a cup of coffee. He glanced at Claire, then quickly looked away. The remaining board members spoke in low voices. Conversation stopped when Noah entered. Grant looked at him. The corners of his mouth lifted. The driver. Claire placed her bag on the table. Mr. Bennett is attending as a financial investigations consultant. Grant leaned back. Employed by whom? By me. You do not currently have the authority to retain outside counsel or consultants on behalf of the company. I retained him personally. That makes this worse. Grant looked around the table. My daughter has brought a former employee into a confidential board session after becoming personally involved with his family. Claire remained standing. The agenda has been amended. You do not amend an emergency meeting called by the chairman. I am still Chief Executive Officer, for the moment. Grant tapped the papers in front of him. The first matter is the vote of no confidence. No, Claire said. The first matter is the attempted transfer of $30 million from a trust you controlled into an offshore account. Several directors turned toward Grant. He did not move. I have no idea what she is referring to. Claire placed a copy of the transfer authorization on the table. Grant did not look at it. This is exactly why the board must act. Claire has allowed a private family dispute to impair her judgment. He nodded toward the screen at the far end of the room. Martin pressed a button. Photographs appeared. Claire leaving the shareholder brunch with Noah's hand on her arm. Evelyn entering Noah's cottage. Noah standing beside Claire at the marina. The final image showed Noah reaching into the back of the executive car. Grant folded his hands. For 3 years, Mr. Bennett concealed his federal background while driving members of this family. Last Saturday, he removed an item from my daughter's purse. Days later, he claimed his deceased wife was connected to a private family trust. One director looked at Noah. Did you take something from Ms. Whitmore's purse? Noah opened the leather folder. Yes. Claire turned slightly toward him. Grant allowed the silence to grow. What did you take a photograph? Without permission? Yes. Grant looked around the table. No further explanation is necessary. Noah placed the 2 photographs side by side. One is the photograph I took. The other belonged to my wife. A director near the window leaned forward. They are identical, yes. Grant's expression remained calm. A photograph does not establish a claim to company assets. No one said it did. Claire replied. Rebecca distributed sealed packets. These contain the original adoption documents for Lillian Rose Hart, the laboratory confirmation of biological kinship, and the founding instrument of the Lillian Rose Trust. Arthur Bell opened his packet first. His eyes moved from the DNA report to Evelyn's name on the original trust agreement. Grant looked at Rebecca. You have violated attorney-client privilege. Rebecca met his gaze. My client is Evelyn Whitmore. She is my wife. She is not your property. Martin shifted in his chair. Grant looked toward Noah again. You admit you took the photograph. I do. You used it to investigate a wealthy family. No. You expect this board to believe you joined Whitmore Maritime by accident. I joined because I needed a schedule that allowed me to raise my daughter. You were a federal agent. My wife was dying. Grant paused. For the first time, something uncertain moved behind his eyes. Noah continued. I resigned to care for her. After she died, I took the first stable position that gave me health insurance and brought me home before my daughter went to sleep. And you never researched the Whitmore family. I knew what was public. You never connected your wife to Evelyn, no. Not until the photograph fell from Claire's purse. No. Grant smiled faintly. A convenient story. Noah looked at the photographs. It was not convenient for my wife. The room quieted. Rebecca placed the surrender form on the table. Lillian Rose Hart was born to Evelyn Hart in Tacoma in 1992. She was adopted by a family in Oregon. She later became Lillian Bennett and died 3 years ago. Her daughter, Sophie Bennett, is the lawful direct heir named under the trust. Grant turned toward the board. This matter has nothing to do with Whitmore Maritime. Claire opened a second folder. It became company business when funds from Lily's trust were moved through corporate subsidiaries and used to purchase voting shares. Arthur Bell looked up. What shares Claire distributed the records? 3 acquisitions made through Whitmore Strategic Holdings. The purchase money originated in the Lillian Rose Trust. A director named Margaret Sloan scanned the first page. These transfers were approved by Northline Advisory. No, Noah said. Northline received the funds. The approvals originated with Whitmore accounts controlled by Grant Whitmore and Martin Kessler. Martin sat forward. That is false. Noah turned the screen toward the room. A simple sequence of accounts appeared. The Trust, Rainfield Capital in Delaware, a Cayman Investment Fund, Northline Advisory in Seattle, Whitmore Strategic Holdings. Noah remained seated as he spoke. His voice carried no anger. In 2005, $800,000 left the trust. 3 days later, $760,000 entered a Cayman fund. 5 days after that, $720,000 reached Northline Advisory. Within the same quarter, Northline financed the purchase of Whitmore Maritime voting shares. Grant interrupted. Investment funds move through multiple jurisdictions every day. Yes, then you have proven nothing. Noah changed the screen. 22 years of transfers appeared. Different amounts, the same path, the same timing. The pattern repeated 47 times. Martin shook his head. Northline provided legitimate consulting services. Describe one. Martin looked at him. What? One service, one report, one project, one employee. This is not a deposition. No, Noah said. A deposition would be less comfortable. A few directors lowered their eyes. Grant placed one hand on the table. Northline was managed by Thomas Vail. Claire looked toward the board. Thomas Vail died 2 years ago. Noah displayed the recent payment records. Northline continued receiving quarterly fees after his death. Arthur Bell frowned. Who controls the company now? No public record identifies the beneficial owner. Grant spread his hands. Then again, there is no connection to me. Noah removed one final document from the folder. This morning, Rebecca Sloan obtained account authority records through an emergency disclosure order. Rebecca placed copies before the directors. Noah continued. Northline's authorized signer is a private holding company called GW Marine Partners. Grant's face did not change. Claire watched him more closely. Noah displayed the registration. GW Marine Partners was created by the law firm that manages Grant Whitmore's personal investments. Its mailing address is the private marina he purchased 6 years ago. Grant turned to Rebecca. Those records were obtained illegally. They were obtained under court order, she said. Martin pushed back from the table. I was not aware of any of this. Claire looked at him. You authorized 17 of the transfers. I approved documents presented by the chairman. Grant turned. Be careful, Martin. The warning was soft. Everyone heard it. Martin's face lost color. Noah opened the electronic logs. Several transfers were authorized through Grant's credentials while Grant was outside the country. The access originated from your office. Martin looked toward the door. Claire spoke before he could rise. Sit down. He remained still. Grant looked around the table. You are watching a coordinated effort to assign criminal meaning to routine transactions. My daughter has been manipulated by a man who entered this company under false pretenses. Claire's voice stayed level. What false pretenses he did not disclose his investigative background. It appeared on his application. Grant looked towards Human Resources Director Helen Price. She nodded reluctantly. It was disclosed. Grant's jaw tightened. He shifted toward Noah. You lost your wife. You found a rich family. You saw an opportunity. Noah's hands remained flat on the table. My daughter owns the claim, not me. You are her guardian. The court appoints an independent trustee for any recovered funds. You could influence her. She is 8. Exactly. Noah looked directly at him. You are trying to make fatherhood sound like a financial instrument. Grant's eyes hardened. I am trying to protect this company from someone who stole from my daughter. Claire's expression changed. My photograph. Yes, the one you are using to distract from $32 million. Grant stood. This meeting was called to remove you. The boardroom door opened. Evelyn entered. She wore the same dark wool coat from the hotel. Her hair was tied back. Her left hand was bare. Grant stared at her. What are you doing here? Evelyn closed the door. Voting. You have no board authority. Rebecca placed the notarized revocation on the table. Mrs. Whitmore revoked your marital proxy last night. Grant looked down at the paper. For the first time, his control broke visibly. You signed this. Evelyn walked to the empty chair beside Claire. Yes, you do not understand what they are doing. I understand what you did. Grant lowered his voice. Evelyn, this is not the place. You chose the place when you moved Lily's money through the company. Several directors looked toward her. Grant stepped away from his chair. I protected you. From what? From scandal. From your parents. From a mistake you made before we met. Evelyn's face became still. Lily was not a mistake. I did not say she was. You never said her name at all. Grant glanced toward the board. This family matter should not be discussed here. Evelyn removed a small paper from her purse. It was one of Lily's letters. You open the trust statements every January. I manage them. You knew why the trust existed. Yes, you knew it belonged to my daughter. It belonged to no one until an heir was located. Noah's gaze sharpened. Evelyn continued. You believed no one would ever find her. Grant said nothing. That was why you took it. I invested it. You hid it. I increased its value through corporate opportunities. You used it to buy control. Grant's voice rose. I built this company. Claire looked at the records. With Lily's money. He turned toward her. Everything you have came through me. Claire remained seated. No, everything you controlled came through other people. Grant stared at Evelyn. If you vote against me, you end our marriage. Evelyn placed her wedding ring on the table. It ended when you decided my lost daughter was more useful as an empty account than a living person. The room did not move. Grant looked at the ring, then at his wife. You will regret this. I regret 34 years. Rebecca opened the voting register. Claire spoke. The first resolution suspends Grant Whitmore as chairman and revokes his financial authority pending an independent investigation. Grant returned to his seat. This board cannot remove me based on allegations. Arthur Bell looked up from the documents. They are no longer only allegations. Grant turned. Arthur. Bell closed the packet. You used trust assets to acquire shares that increased your voting control. If that is confirmed, every vote connected to those shares may be challenged. It has not been confirmed. The bank authority records carry your holding company. Grant looked toward Margaret Sloan. She avoided his eyes. Claire called the vote. The first 5 directors voted to remove Grant. 2 voted against. Martin abstained. Arthur Bell looked at Grant for a long moment. Then he said, Remove. Margaret Sloan changed her expected vote. Remove. Evelyn cast the final vote. Remove. 9 in favor, 2 against, 1 abstention. Grant sat without speaking. Claire signed the resolution. Rebecca sent the certified copy to the bank compliance officer. The wall clock showed 8:54. No one left the table. At 8:57, Rebecca's phone rang. She answered and listened. The bank has suspended the transfer. Claire released a breath. Grant looked toward Noah. You think this is victory? Noah closed the leather folder. This was never my money. Grant turned to Claire. You will destroy everything I built. She looked across the table at him. No. I am finding out what you built with. Corporate security entered. Grant stood before either officer touched him. He gathered no papers. At the door, he looked back at Evelyn. She did not look away. After he left, the directors began speaking at once. Claire heard words like disclosure auditors, regulators, stock price, and criminal exposure. She answered each question. She appointed a temporary chair. She ordered the suspension of Martin's access. She authorized an independent review of every transaction connected to Northline Advisory. By the time the room emptied, rain covered the windows. Rebecca left to meet federal investigators. Evelyn remained seated, staring at the wedding ring on the table. Claire stood near the glass. Seattle stretched below her, blurred and distant. Noah approached, but stopped several feet away. She did not turn. I lost my father today. Noah looked toward the closed boardroom door. I know. He is still alive. I know. I should hate him. Noah said nothing. Claire pressed one hand against the cold glass. And I found my sister after she was already gone. Her voice broke on the final word. Noah moved closer. You found her daughter in time. Claire turned. For years she had cried only in locked rooms, quietly, efficiently, as if grief were another task that could be completed before morning. Now she could not stop it. Noah opened his arms without stepping forward. He left the distance for her to decide. Claire crossed it. She rested her forehead against his shoulder. His hand settled carefully between her shoulder blades. He did not promise that everything would be repaired. He simply remained there while the rain moved across the city and Lily's photograph rested on the boardroom table behind them. Across the water in Port Townsend, Sophie sat at the kitchen table with colored pencils arranged by shade. Evelyn sat beside her. Between them lay a large sheet of paper covered in branches and names. Sophie drew another line. Evelyn watched. "Who goes there?" Sophie looked toward the empty space. "My mom." She printed Lily carefully. Then she left the branch open. "I am waiting for Dad and Aunt Claire." "Why, so they can help me put everyone in the right place." The empty branch remained on Sophie's drawing for nearly 6 months. By the time winter left Port Townsend, the paper had softened at the corners from being moved between the kitchen table, the bookshelf, and the wooden box where Noah kept Lily's letters. Sophie added names slowly. Some were written in careful block letters. Others had been erased and rewritten until the paper thinned beneath the pencil. She placed Evelyn beside Lily. She placed Claire beneath Evelyn. She drew Noah beside Lily, then added herself between them with a line that curved around both names. Grant did not appear anywhere. Noah noticed. He did not ask. Outside the cottage, the last patches of snow disappeared from the shaded side of the workshop. Rain softened the gravel path. Yellow crocuses pushed through the soil near the porch steps, opening their petals whenever the clouds gave the sun a few minutes. The harbor remained cold and gray. A gull walked the rail of the nearest pier each morning, stopping at the same post as if it had an appointment. Inside the workshop, Noah sat across from a woman named Margaret Ellis while she explained how her brother had gained control of their mother's bank account. The woman was 72. Her coat remained buttoned, though the stove was warm. He says she agreed to everything Margaret said. Did she? She signed papers. That is not the same question. Margaret lowered her eyes. Noah opened the folder she had brought. He read the first page, then the second. There were no federal credentials on the wall, no photographs of courtrooms, no framed newspaper articles from the years when his name had appeared beneath headlines about financial prosecutions. A small brass plate beside the door read, "Bennett Financial Investigations." Below it, in smaller letters, was a sentence Claire had suggested. Family trusts, estate fraud, asset tracing. Noah had objected that it sounded too formal. Claire had said formal was useful when frightened people were deciding whether to trust a stranger. She had been right. Most of his clients arrived frightened. Many had been told they were confused, ungrateful, or too emotional to understand what had happened to their own money. Noah listened. Then he followed the numbers. At 3:15, Margaret Ellis left with a list of documents to request from the bank. Noah stood in the workshop doorway and watched her car disappear along the gravel road. The school bus stopped at the corner a few minutes later. Sophie stepped down wearing a red backpack and carrying a cardboard model of the solar system. One of the planets hung by a thread. Noah walked to meet her. "Saturn appears injured. It is Uranus. I apologize to Uranus. The string came loose during lunch. Can it survive until we reach the house? Probably." Sophie handed him the model. He carried it with both hands. "You have a client she just left. Did someone steal from her, maybe? Will you find out? I will try." Sophie nodded. That was one of the changes 6 months had brought. She no longer expected Noah to know every answer immediately. She had begun to understand that adults often lived inside questions for a long time before anything became clear. At the porch, she kicked mud from her shoes. "Is Aunt Claire coming tonight?" "She said she would. You said that last Friday. She was in Tacoma. She has a phone." Noah opened the door. "She used it to call you twice." "That is not the same as being here." "No." Sophie placed her backpack on the chair. "Grandma Evie is coming tomorrow. I know, she is bringing the blue pencils." "You have blue pencils. They are not the good blue." Noah set the solar system on the table. "What makes a blue pencil good? It listens." He looked at her. Sophie removed her coat. "You would not understand." Noah did not argue. Some standards were beyond him. On the refrigerator beneath a magnet shaped like a fairy hung a court order dated 3 weeks earlier. The Lillian Rose Trust had been legally restored. The missing funds had not returned all at once. Accounts had been frozen in Washington, Delaware, and the Cayman Islands. 2 properties connected to Grant had been seized. Whitmore Maritime had agreed to repay money that passed through its subsidiaries, though the independent audit concluded that most employees and directors had known nothing about the scheme. A bank in Seattle settled rather than defend 20 years of ignored warning signs. The restored trust held $37,800,000. It belonged to Sophie. Noah could not withdraw from it. He had insisted on that condition before the judge required it. An independent fiduciary managed the accounts. Rebecca remained legal counsel. Every major decision required court review until Sophie reached adulthood. When the judge asked Noah whether he objected to those limitations, he had answered no. Grant's attorney had watched him from across the courtroom. Later outside, a reporter had asked whether Noah felt cheated by the restrictions. Noah had looked at the camera. The money was never mine. The answer appeared on the evening news. Sophie had seen it while eating soup. She had turned to him and said, "It is mine, though." "Yes. Can I buy a horse? Not today." "How many days?" "We will discuss it when you can clean your room without being reminded." Sophie had considered this impossible condition and returned to her soup. Grant had been charged with wire fraud, money laundering, falsifying corporate records, and breach of fiduciary duty. His trial had not begun. His lawyers argued that the trust transfers were investments approved by Evelyn. Federal prosecutors argued that false statements, hidden ownership records, and payments to a company controlled by a dead man told a different story. Noah followed the case without speaking publicly. Evelyn filed for divorce. Grant contested nearly every term. He challenged the revocation of the marital proxy, the division of property, and the ownership of the Seattle house. He did not challenge the existence of Lily. That fact mattered more to Evelyn than she admitted. She had moved into a small apartment near the waterfront. The first time Claire saw it, she stood in the living room and looked at the plain white walls. "You have no art. I have not decided what belongs here. You owned 3 houses. Your father chose what belonged in them." Claire did not answer. The following weekend, she brought Evelyn a framed copy of Sophie's family tree. The empty branch was still visible. Evelyn hung it above the fireplace. Whitmore Maritime changed more quickly than the family did. Claire stepped down as chief executive officer 3 months after the board meeting. Business reporters called it a retreat. Investors called it a stabilizing decision. Grant's allies called it proof that she had never been strong enough to lead. Claire read every article. Then she appointed Denise Cooper, the company's longtime chief operating officer, as chief executive. Denise had spent 20 years moving cargo, negotiating union contracts, and solving problems Grant never noticed. On her first day, she removed the portrait of Grant from the executive conference room. Claire became chairwoman of the board. She created an independent ethics committee. She ordered a review of every private company transaction from the previous 15 years. She sold the marina Grant had purchased with trust money and transferred the proceeds into the recovery fund. For the first time since she was 25, Claire did not arrive at Whitmore Tower before sunrise. She kept her apartment in Seattle. She spent 3 days a week at the company. Most Thursday evenings, she took the ferry to Port Townsend. At first, she stayed at the rented house near the marina. Then Sophie began leaving books at Noah's cottage for her. A mystery novel appeared on the guest room table. A spare toothbrush appeared in the bathroom. A gray sweater remained on the back of a kitchen chair for 3 weeks. Noah noticed each object. He said nothing. Claire and Sophie learned one another in small pieces. Claire learned that Sophie hated bananas but liked banana bread. She learned that Sophie became quiet when angry and talkative when afraid. She learned that Lily had sung badly while cooking and that Sophie believed this was a family tradition. Sophie learned that Claire drank coffee without sugar. She learned that Claire did not know how to braid hair. She learned that powerful executives could lose at checkers 4 times in one evening and become increasingly suspicious of an 8-year-old. "Are you moving the pieces when I look away?" Claire asked. Sophie rested her chin in her hands. "That would be cheating. That is not an answer. It is the answer you give Dad." Noah looked up from the sink. Claire narrowed her eyes at him. "You are raising a criminal strategist. She gets that from your side." Sophie laughed. Claire did too. The sound stopped Noah for half a second. It did not sound like Lily. That mattered. During the first months, every moment of warmth between Noah and Claire seemed to arrive beside a warning. A hand resting too close on the table, a glance held too long in the kitchen, silence that felt less empty when the other person remained inside it. Neither crossed the distance. Claire did not stay overnight at the cottage. Noah did not ask her to. When they walked together, Sophie usually walked between them. When they spoke about Lily, they did so without lowering their voices. Claire asked questions Noah had never expected. What food did Lily hate? What song did she play when she cleaned the house? Did she know she was dying before the doctors told her? Did she ever resent Claire without knowing who Claire was? Noah answered what he could. One evening in February, Claire found him in the workshop sanding a cedar box. Snow tapped softly against the windows. Sophie was asleep upstairs. Claire stood near Lily's photograph. She was beautiful. Yes. Did she know it? She knew people told her. That is different. Noah set the sandpaper down. She did not think beauty was useful. Claire smiled faintly. That sounds like her. You did not know her, no. The smile disappeared. I keep saying things like that. What things? As though I knew what she would have thought. What she would have wanted. Noah leaned against the workbench. You are trying to create a sister from what remains. Is that wrong? No. Does it bother you sometimes? Claire looked at him. Why? Because I am afraid you are building someone who never made mistakes. Claire turned toward the photograph. Did she? She once drove from Portland to Port Townsend with the parking brake partly engaged. Claire looked back. That cannot be true. The smell reached the cabin before she noticed. What else? She lied about liking my mother's sweet potato pie for 9 years. That sounds kind. It became less kind when my mother sent 3 pies every Thanksgiving. Claire laughed. Noah smiled. Then the room became quiet again. Claire touched the edge of the frame. I think I need her to have been perfect because she lost so much. She was not perfect. No, she was angry. She was impatient. She bought books and never returned them. She hated asking for help. She loved Sophie more than anything and still became frustrated when Sophie would not sleep. Claire listened. Noah continued. She was a person. That is what she would want you to know. Claire lowered her hand. Thank you. He nodded. Neither moved. Snow gathered on the dark glass. For one moment, Noah thought she might step closer. Claire picked up her coat instead. I should go. The roads are getting worse. I can drive slowly. You can take the guest room. She looked toward the cottage. Sophie will ask questions. She always asks questions. And what will you tell her? That the roads are unsafe. That is all. Noah looked at Claire. For tonight. She stayed. In the morning, Sophie found her drinking coffee at the kitchen table. The child looked from Claire to Noah. Did the roads become unsafe? Yes, Claire said. Sophie looked through the window. The snow had already begun to melt. They look safe now. They improved. Sophie opened the refrigerator. Good. Noah waited. No question came. He should have known better. Sophie poured milk into a glass. Then she asked, Are you two going to get married? Claire nearly dropped her coffee. Noah closed his eyes. No, he said. Sophie looked at Claire. Do you want to? Claire set down the cup. I think this conversation requires more breakfast. That means yes. It does not. That is what Dad says when he does not want to answer. Noah turned toward the stove. I am making pancakes. Sophie nodded. That also means yes. Evelyn's relationship with Sophie developed more slowly. She came every other weekend. At first she arrived carrying gifts, books, clothes, a silver bracelet that had belonged to Lily's grandmother. Noah returned most of them. Sophie does not need to be purchased, he said. Evelyn stood on the porch with a wrapped box in her hands. I am not trying to purchase her, I know. Then why can she not have this? Because you have brought something every time. Evelyn looked down at the box. What should I bring yourself? That does not feel like enough. It is what she is deciding. The next weekend, Evelyn arrived with nothing. Sophie opened the door and looked at her empty hands. No present. No, why your father told me I was bringing too many. Sophie considered this. He is right. Noah heard from the kitchen. Evelyn removed her coat. What would you like to do? Sophie held up a blue pencil. Fix the map. They sat together for 2 hours. Evelyn described the farmhouse on Whidbey Island. The porch had 6 steps. The kitchen windows faced west. A narrow path led toward the bluff. The cedar tree stood close enough to scrape the roof during storms. Sophie corrected each detail. Mom said there was a red door. There was. Dad thought she invented it. Your mother received a description of the house in her adoption packet. Sophie looked toward Noah. You knew I figured it out. When a while ago. Why did you not tell me I wanted Grandma Evie to tell you? It was the first time he had used the title. Evelyn's pencil stopped. Sophie noticed. Do you want me to call you Grandma? Evelyn looked at the page. I want you to call me whatever feels true. Sophie returned to the map. For another month, she called her Evelyn. Then, during a school art show, Evelyn arrived late because the ferry had been delayed. Sophie stood beside a wall covered in paintings. She saw Evelyn enter and waved. Grandma Evie, mine is over here. The words came easily. Evelyn stopped beneath the fluorescent lights. Her face changed. She did not cry. She walked across the room and studied Sophie's painting. It showed a cedar tree bending over a gray house. You put the tree on the south side, Evelyn said. Sophie smiled. I know. In early April, Evelyn called Noah. I found the address. He stood in the workshop doorway with the phone against his ear. What address? The farmhouse? Noah looked toward the kitchen window. Sophie was doing homework. It still exists, yes. The family that bought it from my mother sold it twice. A couple from Everett owns it now. Have you contacted them? No. Why not? I thought Sophie should decide. That Sunday, 4 people boarded the ferry to Whidbey Island. Noah drove. Sophie sat in the back seat beside Evelyn, holding the map across her knees. Claire sat in front. The morning was bright, but cold. Sunlight flashed across the water. The ferry carried delivery trucks, motorcycles, and families drinking coffee from paper cups. Sophie climbed out of the car before the ferry left the dock. Noah followed her to the rail. Wind pulled at her coat. Do you think Mom went there? She asked. No, not even once. I do not think so. She knew it anyway. She knew the description. Sophie looked across the water. Is that the same as knowing no? What is the difference? Noah rested his hands on the rail. Knowing a place in your mind means it can become anything you need. Seeing it means accepting what is actually there. Which is better, both can matter. Sophie nodded as though filing the answer away. Claire joined them. Her shoulder touched Noah's. Neither moved. The farmhouse stood at the end of a narrow road lined with fir trees. The owners had painted the porch white. The front door was blue instead of red. A new garage occupied part of the yard. But the cedar tree remained on the south side of the house. Its trunk leaned toward the roof. Its branches moved in the wind. Sophie stepped from the car with her map held in both hands. Evelyn remained seated. Claire opened the rear door. Mother, I need a moment. Claire waited. Evelyn looked at the house through the windshield. I was 15 the last time I stood there. What happened? My mother sold it after my grandmother died. I remember watching strangers carry out the furniture. You do not have to go closer. Yes, Evelyn said. I do. The owners met them near the porch. They had agreed to allow a brief visit after Rebecca explained the family connection. Sophie walked around the house, comparing the windows and the path with her drawing. The driveway curves too far, she said. Evelyn stood beneath the cedar tree. It always did. I drew it closer. Your mother may have imagined it that way. Sophie moved the map against the tree trunk. The porch is wrong. It used to be gray, and the door was red. Yes. Sophie studied the picture. I got the important part right. Evelyn looked down. What is the important part? The tree. Why? Because it stayed. Evelyn closed her eyes. Claire moved closer but did not touch her. After a moment, Evelyn opened them again. The owner offered to take a photograph. They stood beneath the cedar tree, Sophie in front, Evelyn beside her, Claire on the other side. Noah hesitated near the path. Sophie waved. Dad. He joined them. The owner raised the camera. No one tried to copy the old photograph. No one stood in Evelyn's original place. The new image did not replace anything. It simply existed beside what had been lost. Afterward, Sophie and Evelyn remained near the porch. Claire walked with Noah toward the bluff. Below them, water moved against dark rocks. The grass was wet beneath their shoes. Claire placed both hands in her coat pockets. "Are we avoiding something?" "Yes." She looked at him. "That was quick. You asked a clear question. What are we avoiding?" Noah looked toward the farmhouse. "Sophie. She already thinks we are getting married. She is 8. She is observant. She is impatient. She gets that from your side." Noah smiled briefly. Then his expression became serious. "You are Lily's sister. I know. You are Sophie's aunt. I know. You are still learning what those things mean. So are you." "Yes." Claire stopped walking. Noah stopped beside her. "Is it because I look like her?" "No." "Is it because you still love her?" "Yes." Claire absorbed the answer. Noah continued before she could turn away. "I still love Lily. I expect I always will." The wind lifted Claire's hair across her face. "Then there is no place for anyone else. That is what I believed." And now, Noah looked back toward the cedar tree. Evelyn was showing Sophie where the old garden had been. "Now, I think love is not a room with one chair." Claire's eyes shone, but she did not look away. "When you remember Lily, what do you see, my wife, Sophie's mother? A woman who made mistakes and laughed too loudly and believed every old house had a secret room. And when you look at me," Noah took a breath, "I see Claire. That is not very specific. I see someone who spent her life protecting a company because she thought it was the only way to protect her family." Claire remained still. "I see someone who came to my house before sunrise because she was afraid I had lied to her. I was prepared to call the police. I know. I might still. I know." She smiled faintly. Noah continued. "I see a woman who did not know how to sit at a kitchen table without checking her phone. Now you lose at checkers for hours. I do not lose. Sophie cheats." "She does not. She absolutely does." Noah stepped closer. "I see someone who stayed." Claire's smile disappeared. "That sounds dangerous." "It is. For whom? For me." She looked toward his hand. It rested beside his coat. "You have been careful for 6 months. So have you. I am tired of being careful. I am not." The words hurt her. He saw it. Noah reached for her hand. His fingers closed around hers. "I want to be deliberate." Claire looked down at their hands. "What is the difference? Careful means fear makes the decision. Deliberate means we do." Her thumb moved against his. "And what are we deciding? That Sophie needs you as her aunt before she needs you as anything else? I agree. That Lily is not a shadow standing between us." Claire raised her eyes. "I agree. That neither of us uses grief to explain feelings we are afraid to name." She waited. "What feeling are you afraid to name?" Noah looked at her for a long time. "I care about you." Claire's voice softened. That is not that frightening word. No, say the frightening one." He stepped closer. "I am falling in love with you." The wind moved across the bluff. Claire closed her eyes for 1 second. When she opened them, she was smiling and crying at once. "That took you 6 months, I wanted to be sure. And are you?" "No." She laughed through the tears. Noah lifted her hand. "I am sure enough to begin." Claire leaned toward him. He met her halfway. The kiss was quiet. No audience, no dramatic promise. Only the cold wind, the water below, and 2 people choosing something that had frightened them because it mattered. When they returned to the farmhouse, Sophie looked at their joined hands. She said nothing until they reached the car. Then she climbed into the back seat beside Evelyn. "Did you figure it out?" Claire turned. "Figure out what?" Sophie placed the map on her lap. "Where everyone goes?" Noah started the engine. "Not completely." Sophie nodded. "Maps are never finished." That evening they returned to the cottage after sunset. Evelyn sat on the porch with Sophie and listened while the child read aloud from a book about coastal birds. Claire carried 2 cups of coffee into the workshop. Noah was repairing the leg of an old kitchen chair. Lily's photograph remained on the shelf. Beside it stood the new photograph from Whidbey Island. Evelyn, Claire, Sophie, and Noah beneath the cedar tree. Claire set 1 cup near his hand. "Do you ever think about Saturday afternoon?" "Which one?" "The day I fell asleep in your car." "You did not fall asleep." "I was resting." "You were snoring." "I do not snore." "You said Mom 3 times and threatened someone named Gerald." Claire frowned. "I do not know a Gerald. That concerned me." She leaned against the workbench. What do you think would have happened if the photograph had not fallen? Noah ran his thumb along the smooth wood of the chair. I would have driven you to the lodge. You did drive me to the lodge. He looked through the open door. Sophie's voice drifted from the porch. Evelyn corrected the name of a bird. Sophie corrected her pronunciation. Noah looked back at Claire. No, he said. I think you drove all of us home. Claire rested her hand beside his on the worn pine. This time there was no space between their fingers. Outside, a fairy horn sounded across the dark water. The workshop smelled of cedar shavings, coffee, and salt air. On the kitchen table, Sophie's family tree waited beneath the yellow light. The branch beside Claire's name was no longer empty. Sophie had drawn a path from it toward the cottage. Above the house, she had written Lily's name across the sky. Below it, in smaller letters, she had added one sentence. Everyone arrived late. No one left.